Behold, we might say. Here's a cartoon I did some time ago for some mugs, for some merchandise. I don't know if they will ever see the light of day, but behold, a cartoon climax, a contemptuous concatenation of cruelty that is Suella Braverman, portrayed here as Cruella de Vil, complete with the occasional Dalmatian dog. I picked up somebody else's idea in this cartoon, but I think it's appropriate because with so much spitting, so much nastiness, this is Suella Braverman. Once she is cornered, once she is trapped, and once her game is up, is spitting at almost anybody who's likely to come into her orbit, her field of vision. So she starts by castigating Robert Jenrick and calling him left-wing, which is absurd and nonsensical. And then she goes on and she attacks gay pride. The point is, I said earlier that many of the Conservative voters switched to Labour or Lib Dems. I think actually the answer is very few of them did so, and somebody has just written to me and said the numbers don't show that. In fact, the numbers show no change in the Labour vote since 2019, nor for the Lib Dems. The election was lost because many Conservative voters either didn't vote, so they could have been centralists, but the main reason is that they voted for reform. I think I think that's partly true. I concede that. I don't think this election was won by Labour, but Labour now has to justify the fact that it's got the win by default. It needs to make the most of it. It's carried that Ming vase across the floor, and it's done remarkably well in the process. Congratulations, Labour. But the Conservatives are now going to have to either repair themselves, move closer to the centre, or they're going to have to rip themselves apart. And I'm sure those people who want to see them ripping themselves apart, and I don't think Robert Jenrick, as somebody who is newly identified as being of the left, is likely to be one of those who would be delighted to rip himself apart. I think instead it's more likely that Robert Jenrick is going to be a serious candidate for the centre, and maybe he should be grateful to Suella Braverman for identifying him as being in that area. But let's just have a look very quickly at Braverman's mad attack on the pride flag. So she's at a conference in the National Conservatism Conference in Washington. It's known to focus on its nationalist values. Maybe she could just stay there. And during her address, she strongly criticised the trans-inclusive Progress Pride flag and the gender-affirming care for trans youth, which she derogatorily referred to as mutilation. She expressed frustration over the inability to remove the Progress Pride flag from government buildings during her tenure as Home Secretary, describing the situation as being akin to occupied territory, to being in occupied territory. She knows nothing about being in occupied territory. She has never been in a situation where she has faced that sort of threat. And there are so many people who are coming across the channel who have faced that sort of threat. She is, there are times when you buy a bag of horse shit and you take the view of Dolly Levi in Hello Dolly that manure, if you pardon the expression, is only good if you spread it around making young things grow. But there's a type of manure, there's a type of ordure which simply needs to be dumped. And Suella Braverman and her rhetoric simply needs to be jettisoned. And if she wants to go off to reform, I'm sure they will embrace her with eager, open arms. But this nastiness where she attacks anything, where she grasps at anything that's as I say, within her orbit, is the stuff of a cartoon villainess. And her contentious remarks included a vehement denunciation of gender-affirming surgeries, which are only performed on adults within the NHS in the UK. She argued that the presence of the Progress Pride flag symbolised her government's failure to address what she termed trans fanatics. The other day, the partner of James, then Jan Morris, died. And Jan Morris was one of the one of the first trans famous trans people. And I remember I had a copy of her book, which was signed and headed James Morris. And I remember going to meet her in the Oxford Catholic chaplaincy when she came to give a talk. And she was a thrilling writer, a thrilling individual, and a very brave trendsetter, somebody who challenged the existing norms. And I think her surgery took place in the 1970s. She was the most extraordinary woman, whose transition. I also remember reading articles when I was a child about her, and about how before her transition she had climbed Everest, I think, and she'd been a soldier. Braverman's speech included graphic and emotionally charged language, asserting that such medical care should never be allowed in a civilized society. I think she is a heartless, horrible woman, and she has no place on a public platform. This goes beyond. As a government, we need to have a government that cares for everyone, and the best way to care for Suella Braverman, frankly, is to silence her. And I think the sort of things she is saying go beyond the statements made by J.K. Rowling. And J.K. Rowling is talking about spaces for trans people and spaces for biological women. And although the language she is using is divisive and is shocking, it doesn't go beyond that point. Suella Braverman today has gone beyond that point and said that trans people should be denied care. She is repulsive and inhuman. And people who have struggled so much with their identity now have to struggle with a person who has wielded power in the Home Office, who has wielded power and promoted contemptuous policies. Now she is showing herself in her true colours, and she is revealed as the hideous witch that we always knew she was. I'm surprised she's not cackling and bursting into flame, or being doused with water and melting into the ground. This is somebody who, we want free debate. We want free debate, but debate which is so horrendous to whole swathes of our community cannot be allowed to be encouraged. And I know people will say, oh yeah, by silencing her, you're contradicting yourself. You're saying, how can you want freedom and that this person should not be free? Well, freedom comes at a price. Freedom is about doing good. And doing harm, doing evil, is not being free. There I am invoking medieval theology. You cannot freely do evil. And Suella Braverman is promoting evil to deny people care because she doesn't agree with the pain and the suffering and the heartache and the questioning and the transition that they have gone through or are going through. Because she doesn't agree with it, it should be denied. No, there is only one There is only one route for Suella Braverman, and that is towards silence. I have no problem with her voicing her opinions in private, but that's where they should stay. And we should never really hear of her again. She should never be given the opportunity to run for the leadership of the Conservative Party or to run for the leadership of any party. If Reform want her, they can have her. But I think Nigel Farage will realise that it's precisely the Bravermans that he has to strip from his own party to make it electable in a wider sense. And I know that David Tennant got into trouble for suggesting that Kemi Badenoch should be silenced. But there are times when people who do damage should be silenced by our society. When people who promote evil, if we allow them to speak out, if we allow them that free rein, if we allow them to be platformed, particularly because they've held such power, then that becomes our statement. They represent us. They cannot represent us. They must learn to be silent. They're out of office now, so their power is lessened. But Suella Braverman, should she become leader of the opposition, has a platform for this insanity. And this is insanity. Who is she going to attack tomorrow? She's now attacked a member of her own party, a person with whom she worked closely, Jenrick. Now she's attacking the pride flag. Who's next? Who's next on her list? Because she's just lashing out like Ursula in The Little Mermaid. Talons and venom, spitting. I don't think Ursula had talons, did she? She was a sort of octopus. But in fact, I remember somebody did a rather brilliant cartoon of Suella Braverman as a sort of Ursula-like creature. It's appropriate. It's appropriate. Suella Braverman is doing damage. Somebody who does damage is best being silent. And she is now turning on her own party. She is best being silent. And I trust somebody will take her to one side and strongly suggest that if she can't say anything that is positive, like the advice of Thumper in Bambi, she should best say nothing at all. She criticised the cessation of her controversial Rwanda scheme for people crossing the Channel, which was terminated at the start of Keir Starmer's premiership. Her rhetoric has sparked significant debate and backlash, reflecting the deep divisions within the political landscape of Britain regarding LGBTQ+ rights and immigration policies. And Suella Braverman, she does not belong in either the Labour Party or the Conservative Party or the Liberal Party. Let her go to the Reform. That is where she belongs, with the people who Reform is trying to distance itself from. See how she gets in there as Farage tries to reform his own party. Because I think in the event, Farage will realise he doesn't want her either.